program is brought to you by the very elegant Mazda 929. Stylish, responsive, a pure pleasure to drive.
Johnny Tapp is calling in tonight. He's making his way through the rain, is he? Johnny Tapp is a lovely race caller. No one has anything rotten to say about him, which, not just in this business, but in life, is rather a nice tribute. And he's an amazing man, the way he can remember the colours of the jockeys' little cute outfits. And that's when they're at work. So he'll be coming in tonight. Well, among tonight's leading stories and items of interest, another Aboriginal protest gets fairly rough in Brisbane. The guns are growing silent in Ethiopia. Now the rush is on to get precious food flowing again. As well tonight, that gentleman of the turf, Johnny Tapp, will be in for a chat about the racing game and the other passions of his life, and the copper mine discovery that shows ancient man was smarter than we thought.
The great thing about these marks is that they look so fresh. They look as if they were done yesterday. And instead, we have to consider that they were done perhaps 3,500 years ago.
Well, there's been another angry day in Brisbane. Aborigines protesting against new land rights legislation were on the attack.
The numbers for today's march were down, but the anger and intent stronger than last week's protest. The first challenge to police came quickly. It sparked tempers that up to 50 police couldn't contain. Eventually, the gates crumbled, trampled underfoot by dozens who brushed past police to take over the grounds of Parliament House. There was nothing the police could do but protect the front doors. Officers had to stand by as the Australian flag was pulled down, replaced symbolically by the Aboriginal colours. That signalled a bold bid to force entry to Parliament.
Have you got courage, black people, to go through this line of coppers into Goss personally and see him?
It seemed they did. The manicured lawns of Parliament House turned into a battleground.
We don't want to fight this. We don't want to fight
At the height of the violence, the order went out. No more pussyfooting around. Book them for criminal assault. The orders were followed. Eventually, an uneasy truce was called, violence replaced by pleas for calm.
Yeah, well, we'll put it to the people anyway and just see what the people want to do. It'll be their decision as collectively.
The man who controls the parliamentary precinct, Speaker Jim Foras, emerged to warn the continued occupation would not be tolerated.
I am outraged that after the torrents we exhibited the other day, that they come back and willfully destructed the gate of Parliament House with just sheer vandalism, and it's not on.
He has now directed the police, as Joe Bielke-Peterson and his elf did. So, Goss, you have proven that you can stoop lower than the low.
As police prepared for more clashes, Mr Foras gave the order to vacate the grounds.
The order is given, ladies and gentlemen. I ask you to leave. I ask you to leave or else you'll be removed forcibly.
At first they did, and without force. But once herded through the gates, there was more violence and more arrests. As the gates were repaired, Parliament itself was in uproar, the opposition demanding to know if there'd be charges over the lowering of the flag and who'd pay for the damages. There were no answers, but this is the Premier's attitude.
It's loutish, it's vandalism. We won't budge 1 inch now, and in fact, my attitude has hardened, if anything.
Because if you think about it, if you're willing to think about it, and not that that necessarily is justified, but it's amazing the Aborigines haven't got a lot angrier over the last 200 years. Will it produce any good? Will it produce anything? We'll have to wait and see. Well, it was hardly the Petrov affair, but this afternoon's scenes at Darwin Airport were just as emotional. The visiting East Timorese soccer team, minus 4 players who have defected, was preparing to fly home. Relatives and friends tried to turn their heads.
The pressure to stay was intense and obviously painful for members of the East Timorese soccer team. of their teammates had already defected rather than return to Indonesian-controlled East Timor.
They are an actual threat if they go back to East Timor, particularly if they've been observed showing an interest in staying here.
Indonesian troops took over East Timor in 1975 after 400 years of Portuguese control, and resistance groups claim the East Timorese now live under daily threat.
Many of them have been bashed already. People are under threat of being bashed and tortured and disappeared. There are many people disappeared. There are many deaths taking place. On a weekly basis, people die in Dili.
The soccer team arrived in Darwin last week to compete against local teams. Two of its members are now in hiding, seeking permanent residency